Okay, everyone, let's see if we can change some minds tonight. Matt, what are we talking about?
All right, guys. So news out of Israel is after an 11-day ceasefire agreement with the new, call it regime, man, with the new regime coming into power after Netanyahu got ousted. The continuation of the same. We had tensions. In Israel. There was a response, a minor response, and then Israel went full send with airstrikes again. It looks like there's no casualties at this point in time, but it's important because it's, again, in the aftermath of some pretty extreme violence, right? When you look at the decade, this was a really bad back and forth, man. This was really bad. And it's just 11 days after, and it's with the changing government. So it's important.
Yeah, I've just started seeing people talking about Palestine again on TikTok in the last 2 or 3 days. I've started following a few people, but all of the old people that I was getting updates from, last month, I've not seen them at all. I know that, people are saying they don't have internet and whatever, but there's still ways to get information out. So, I think it's important that we don't forget about them just because they go quiet, and it's like they went quiet and then there was nothing for a while, and I'm glad that we've made this connection across the world, and it's so disheartening, and there's got to be a way we can change things for us, for them, for everybody else that's being attacked. I feel helpless, and our government is useless. They're funding it with bombs, like, and money, and supporting them. Like, I don't even understand. Like, nobody on this call or listening to this call has probably ever approved their tax dollars being spent on war in any way.
Yeah, I was going to say, the day before we do the Trickle Up, Matt and I always work on like the agenda, like what we're going to talk about. But like this particular story, I was like researching up to the last possible minute, just because it is like everything is relevant and changing constantly. But at the time that I did finish, before I gave it to everyone at like noon specific time, no casualties had been reported. So I was like, I'm glad that that's kind of a silver lining to the horrific situation. But like, yeah, it's not good.
I think it's meet the new boss, same as the old boss. And Bennett's a tech guy, but he's also a far right guy, just like Netanyahu was. And I think this is his way of saying, don't think you're going to be able to get any kind of things like freedom or rights while I'm in charge. Don't think it's going to be any easier with me sitting in this house. And I think we're fortunate that there was no casualties so far, but I think that situation is not going to hold. And the Biden administration is pretty much useless in reining this in. There are far too many Christian evangelicals in our country that support Israel in whatever it does, simply because they believe Jesus is going to be coming back and needs Israel intact to do so, and that it's part of prophecy. And then, they've kind of pulled this one-ender in a lot of ways, where if any criticism of Israel suddenly becomes anti-Semitic. And one can criticize the nation of Israel without criticizing the Jews in it necessarily. You criticize the ideas and the actions that the government is taking, not Jewish people. And there's a big difference there between the two. And we can never be afraid to criticize the actions of a foreign government just because they're made up of a minority or a certain ethnic group or anything like that. So, yeah, it's been a shit show for a long time, and it's going to continue that way. And I certainly don't like my tax fund money going to this kind of nonsense. That's for sure. But anybody that really wanted peace would pull those dollars out, and you'd see some significant change pretty quickly, I think.
Israeli nationalists wanted to march in Jerusalem to celebrate a significant day when you look back in history, 1967, which was them taking over land, which is contentious land right now. It's contentious internationally, okay? So Israeli nationalists, and remember, Bennett is a far-right member of the government. He just came into power, so these are his people. They wanted to march. Israeli police shut down shops, cleared out Palestinian people, and they were allowed to march. And so, yes, some Palestinians threw rocks after their businesses got shut down. Police moved people out. You can imagine what that looks like in certain cases. So yes, the people responded to government force, right? And then, of course, the Hamas responds because Hamas occupies a leadership position and the opposition, right, which is an impossible task to do, but they try to do it. And so, of course, yes, they responded with some fire balloons, incendiary balloons. And so naturally, Israel thought, you know what, we should fucking send some rocket strikes and possibly kill some kids today. So yeah, that's the state of things, man. That's what this conflict is, and that's why people get pissed off if you actually know what's happening there, because people try to make this out to be some like two-sided event when, yes, Hamas has issues with their ideology. Yes, I don't agree with all of Hamas's tactics, but what the fuck are you supposed to do in response to ethnic cleansing? Do tell.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. It's a one-sided conflict. One side has rocks and the other side has laser-guided bombs. And the truth is, if Israel wanted peace, it could get peace. But it doesn't want peace. It wants that land. And so it's going to continue to keep doing what it's doing. And it's going to continue to hide behind this idea that it's a two-sided proposition. And it's just not. Rocks don't compare with laser-guided missiles.
The one piece of nuance I'll give is that Hamas does receive a significant level of funding from the Iranian regime. And that is an important variable to note, because the Iranian regime will poke at Israel no matter what. So,
I agree, and I think if you were fighting ethnic cleansing, you'd take funding from whoever you could to try and make it happen. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really want to encourage people to like weigh in and be like, hey, do you think this was like good or bad? Like, I'm like, no, obviously, like this whole situation is not ideal by any circumstances. So I don't know what you all want to leave in the comments, but whatever it is to the solution and what Americans could be doing to help with that solution is what I encourage people to leave in the comments.
Because we send Israel $3.8 billion every year. That's just an unattached military aid. Almost all of that's military aid. They get billions more in loans. And like I always say, we provide them unlimited cover with the UN.